There's a fine line between pessimism and realism. Most people have a defense mechanism that won't allow them to go down the road that we have, for whatever reason, that we have gone down this road. And, one of the things that makes it difficult to even be successful in this industry is that it comes at the expense of people around us, and the things that we talk about are not conventional, nor are they considered popular. And and it goes back to the reason why they say there's no bull market like a metals bull market, because when you're making money, and look at silver squeeze as an example. Silver squeeze, it was a whole different mentality. People were excited. They were going to get the silver market. They were going to squeeze the commercial banks. They were going to do what they did to AMC and GameStop. They were going to make a fortune. It was exciting, and you're going to make money, and you're going to buy a new Corvette, and whatever it is, that's one thing. And that's what the equity markets are. And what the precious metals market is the antithesis of that. It is the fact that fear is a much greater motivator than is greed. And when people are scared, obviously their motivations are far greater in terms of acceleration of action than on the other side. But by the same token, when people are not really accustomed to looking at the other side of the coin, and you speak to it, a lot of people would say, oh, he's talking his book, as an example. They would throw that out rather than acknowledge that there really is a very fine line between pessimism and realism. And when you use mathematics and economics and logic to formulate arguments, even if they're not popular in terms of their appeal to the public, either you embrace it and believe what you are reading, what you are witnessing, what you are hearing over and over again, and what you are seeing, or you don't. And it is heavy, and it can be a bummer, because you realize, as we were talking off air, Cliff High talking about $600 silver. And I said, look, you take the price of gold right now, you divide it by 7, which is the geologic ratio currently globally. It's $280. How unrealistic is 6,000? I don't think it is. I think gold at 5,000 is not unrealistic. Divide by 7, you're not too far away from Cliff's number. And one of the reasons that it doesn't look very good, and people have a hard time understanding that, or acknowledging it, or accepting it, is that I look at gold and silver as being the barometer. In other words, they're sitting on the ledge of the bathtub, and the water underneath it is the dollar market. When you pull the plug on the dollar or the bath water and the water falls, well, certainly gold and silver are getting higher and higher and higher in respect to the view from the water. In other words, it's not gold and silver that went higher, it's the dollar that goes lower. What does that mean for our standard of living? What does that mean for the markets? What does that mean for interest rates? What does that mean? And that is not something people want to hear. And I think it's also important to understand that, to me, gold and silver are wealth, and they're not, I never accumulated them ever for impending doom. Yeah, they're great for impending doom because they are a alternative to the currency, to the system. I look at them as equal opportunity for when things do settle out, when there is a correction in the prevailing markets. What does liquidity in gold and silver offer you when all of these other traditional assets have corrected? So it's not just an emergency, it could be an opportunity. And it's also a wonderful way to pass money on to your children and to your grandchildren, or a niece or a nephew or a charity or what have you. It's been considered wealth for 5,000 years. And now look at what the states are doing. There's a handful of states out here who are realizing that, hey, you know what? There's a fine line between realism and pessimism. The dollar is getting its ass kicked, and the brain dead monetary policy of the Fed is destroying it and precipitating a future of uncertainty. So when you see states out there that are saying gold and silver coins minted by the United States, some of them are saying just that. And that's part of what we talked about offline, why I think it's getting so hard to find US minted products, because some of the laws in these states are saying any coin minted past or present by the United States Mint would be considered legal tender for all debts, public and private. Now, a few of the other states who are making this same law have altered it a bit to say any sovereign minted coin from the US or other major mint, sovereign government mint, would be eligible for as currency for all debts, public and private. There are states that are waking up to this, and I think you have to, at some point, It's like an attorney that is representing you for a murder trial and only understanding your argument and not listening to the prosecution. I don't care what their argument is. I know what your defense is. Well, you have to understand both sides of the coin. And actually, there are three sides to every coin. You got the rim too, and there's just more to it than meets the eye in what we're talking about. And we get branded a certain way, and some of it we deserve, I guess. But I just want it to be known that I've done this for 33 years, and 30 of those years until really the pandemic, when everyone's life went tits up, completely and totally upside down. I never, ever, ever, ever spoke about gold and silver as this ultimate tool to protect you for when the sky falls. To me, it's been wealth. It's been wealth I hope I never need to use, that I can give to my children someday. But if I do need it, not just for an emergency, but an opportunity, maybe single-digit price to earnings ratios on blue chip stocks while paying a 5 or 6 or 7% dividend the way they used to be. Or maybe it's the cabin I always wanted up in northern Minnesota on Gull Lake that's selling at 30 cents on the dollar because it's all been so inflated over the last 3 years. Whatever it is, it's not just for an emergency. It's opportunity, it's liquidity, it's wealth, it's a way to pass money on outside of probate. And you go back through all of time, and nobility and kings and queens and emperors and pharaohs, they all owned it as immutable wealth. And they didn't own it for emergencies. They owned it because it was wealth. And that's part of the rhetoric that has branded gold and silver something to be ignored. Not only do they suppress the price, they suppress and they darken the rhetoric, and they turn it into something that it should not be. But if you believe in it the way that you and I do, for the right reasons, the way that you and I do, then our job is to tell people what are those reasons and try to articulate them, and be very clear that this is not fear mongering. This is not selling something specifically because we're saying the wolf is coming, albeit I do think the wolf is coming. But I never accumulated gold and silver because the wolf was coming. And it wasn't until just the last 3 years, let's call it the last chapter, where I sensed the wolf was coming. So yes, it's good for that too. But if it doesn't happen, let's be glad. And let's be thankful, and that the American spirit won out and our backs are against the wall and we fixed the problem. And what's the worst thing that happened? You own an asset that is depleted in nature. It's expanding in use cases industrially and monetarily across the globe, that has been viewed as wealth for 5,000 years. And in the end, will be viewed that way long after we're gone. So, I think it's narrow-minded thinking when you only look at gold and silver as this hedge against, the apocalypse. And let's hope we never have to use it for that. But if we do, you should be damn glad you have it, because if you don't have something like that, you're screwed. But why not have the added insurance on top? It's like a death benefit on an annuity. When people buy annuities, they're not buying it for the death benefit. They're buying it for the income stream. But you know what? If something happens unexpectedly, well, that death benefit comes in handy. And that's kind of the same thing.